We're in the office of Yuri Andropov, the chief of the KGB, on a late summer evening in 1969. A young lieutenant places a thick folder marked "Strictly Confidential" on his desk and steps back. Inside is the case file of a famous Soviet psychic, Ninel Kulagina. Andropov opens the folder with a barely concealed contempt.
I told you I don't want to hear about this woman anymore. Товарищ Andropov, if you allow me, her appearance on Western TV really made a difference.
Andropov pulls out several pages from the top and glances through them. In 1968, Western researchers attending the Moscow Institute for Neurology were shown black and white archive footage demonstrating a middle-aged woman moving objects under a plastic hood. It was also claimed that she could scatter a laser beam, burn a plastic wire, and leave a chemical burn on the skin without even touching it. The official resolution regarding her supernatural powers was accompanied by a scientific explanation, signed by a member of the Soviet Academy of Science, hero of the socialist labor, Professor Yuri Kabzarev. It stated that Ninel Kulagina had a large 50-to-1 gradient between the electrical characteristics in the forward and back parts of her brain, whereas in the average person, the gradient is 4-to-1. Ninel Kulagina was therefore found to be capable of producing energy fields that could affect living and non-living tissues. Researchers from the West were granted access to Ninel Kulagina and largely confirmed her abilities. Among them were 2 Nobel laureates who were overwhelmed by the transcendent dominance of spirits over the physical realm. The footage of their experiments was widely shown on Western television, instigating discussions about the breakthrough of the Soviets in creating a psychotronic weapon and supernatural agents.
And what are Americans gonna do about this? They definitely want their own program now, and more information on Kulagina, obviously. Well, okay, Lieutenant. I really want you to answer truthfully. Is this all a hoax? No, Tavarish Andropov, it's a reality. I've been tested since 1963, first at the Leningrad Institute for Psychiatry. There I demonstrated the ability to move objects and read without looking. I stand with my back to the wall while an assistant places a combination of numbers and signs. I'm not reading them. I make them appear in my consciousness directly. Scientists all over the USSR were mesmerized, enthusiastic about meeting me and testing my abilities themselves. Every single one of them had to admit that they were witnessing a real psychic. Some non-believers have been calling me out since my very first examinations, but when Professor Kabzarev, the knight in the shining armor of Soviet science, stepped in and personally confirmed every one of my abilities, they had no choice but to remain silent. He discovered many more of my capabilities. He suspected that I emit a mixture of unknown energy waves and hormones through the tips of my fingers. And he proved it by demonstrating that I could leave chemical burns on the skin of our assistants, melt polymer threads, and bulk plastic containers.
Those who don't believe in my gifts, how would you explain this? I'm performing miracles in front of a camera, in the presence of the most prominent Soviet scientists. Do you think they wouldn't notice if it was just a magic trick? Of course they would. They tested me hundreds of times.
I'm growing so powerful that when they asked me to manipulate a compass needle, suspecting paranormal, electromagnetic activity of my brain, not only did I make the needle rotate frantically, but I displaced the entire compass. You could hear the lucid excitement in the voice of Professor Edward Godik, the inventor of the first infrared detector, by the way.
При дальнейшей попытке вращать стрелку компаса сдвинулся сам компас в массовом корпусе.
After this experiment, he founded the Laboratory of Radio-Electronic Methods of Research of Biological Objects, for I am the one who breathed life into this new field of science.
If you need more evidence, Tavarish Andropov, test me. In whatever way you find suitable, I'm ready to serve my country, as I did during World War II when I volunteered to the front line at the age of 15. I'm a veteran, a soldier, a chevalier of the Order of the Patriotic War, and I'm your loyal servant. I know that we need to show our enemies that they must respect us, that they must fear us, and I know how to do this. I know what they fear the most.
On March 10, 1970, I'm stepping into the laboratory of the Scientific and Technical Society for Instrument Engineering, led by Professor Gennady Sergeyev. He asks me to have a seat. In front of me on the table, there is a prepared frog. Its chest is wide open, with electrodes attached to its beating heart.
Товарищ Kulagina, we're testing you on behalf of the chief of the KGB, Tоварищ Andropov. This one is very serious. We need you to try to increase and then decrease the heart rate of this frog using your telekinetic abilities.
I concentrate so hard that drops of sweat fall from my forehead. My hand is trembling. The frog's heart visibly stretches and begins beating fast and non-synchronously. Then it slows down and suddenly it stops. Professor Sergeyev commands me to make the frog's heart beat again, but now it's irreversible. One of his assistants, a young lab technician, steps in and attaches cardiac monitors to his chest. He tells me to slow down his heart rate if I'm truly capable. I raise my hand, pointing the tips of my fingers to his chest, and look into his eyes, full of fear and uncertainty. Young fool, you don't know whom you dare to doubt. Moments later, he grabs his chest and starts choking. Professor Sergeyev intervenes and covers the technician with his body.
Stop it,
he shouts.
Can you see it, Tavarish Andropov? Can you appreciate the beauty of it? Imagine the leaders of the capitalist world shivering when they find out that communism has the power to stop their hearts. I can almost feel the goosebumps on their backs. I can almost see the fear in their eyes. I will drape their lives with a constant peril in the name of my motherland, for I am the phenomenon.
Bullshit. Complete bullshit. Tell your cool stories somewhere else, lady. Neither I nor my audience is here to listen to your fairy tales. There is definitely something about you, but it's not a parapsychology for sure. So what is it? I'm seeking the truth, Tavarish Kulagina. Let's begin with your successful experiments.
Another non-believer. Okay. It all started with my husband, Viktor Kulagin. I remember it as if it were yesterday. December 1963, we were listening to the radio talking about a Soviet woman who could tell the color of a light beam projected on her palm without looking. I told him I could do the same.
He was a physicist and didn't believe me, of course, but I showed him. He then found an old movie camera and started filming me.
This is probably my very first footage. You see me moving objects under a plastic hood. It was even before all those fancy labs and eminent scientists. This is all documented, filmed. You cannot deny what you see.
Or can I? This is a footage of James Randi, who found out about you in the early 1970s, when you hyped in the West. Here he is, doing the exact same stuff. He's probably a great psychic too, a telepath, or he just stuck a tiny nylon thread with a knot on the end covered with glue underneath the objects and pulled it towards him, making theatrical grimaces, the same way you did. All those creepy faces, expressions of tension, frantic gestures.
That's not true. I have been supervised throughout the experiments, and the objects were placed under the hood. How would I put a thread there?
Oh, come on, Tavarish Kulagina. Let's rewind a bit. At the beginning of the experiment, the objects are not covered. You have full access to them, only after they are placed under the hood. It's always the same scenario for all your demonstrations. Would you be so kind to tell us about 1965 and the Mendeleev Institute for Metrology? You don't really like to recall this, do you?
Yes. They brought their own hermetic vessel with some objects in it, and yes, I wasn't able to move them, but it happens sometimes. I failed to concentrate because of how critical they were in my regard. I was nervous. That doesn't prove anything. I was investigated in detail in 1966 at Serbsky Institute for Psychiatry in Moscow. It's the largest and the most prominent facility in the entire USSR, and the staff was so impressed that some doctors even decided to write their theses on my phenomenon. Do you think they wouldn't discover nylon threads with bloody knots if there were any?
Actually, they did. Here is the report of senior nurse, Zinaida Pugacheva, who inspected you before one of the experiments at the Serbsky Institute for Psychiatry. Once, during an inspection of clothing before a telepathy session, thin nylon threads with knots at the ends were found on the subject's belt, which served to move objects on the table. Do you want me to remind you what you told to the committee when Zinaida brought you to the session later?
What do you want from me? You know everything now? She just hated me, this bloody Zinaida. She was harassing me constantly. She set it up. You know what? She planted these threats herself. She was jealous of my gift and sought to discredit me. This is just one nasty nurse against hours of filmed experiments. It doesn't prove anything unless you can show on my very many footage at least some sign of a thread with a knot.
If you say so, here you are, failing to move a cap. You are very nervous, realizing that something doesn't work, and finally, in distress, you grab the cap and put it aside, revealing a thread with a knot. You swiftly drag it away, simultaneously taking your hands under the table to get rid of it. Let me guess, a drop of glue that was supposed to stick to the cup also stuck to the table, ruining your entire show.
And what about the compass needle? Or do you want to say I somehow attached a thread to it?
Word to James Randy.
11 degrees in rotation. Here we have a similar marine compass. Now here's my thumb tip. Let's see what deflection I can cause using my own version of this ancient trick. It's showtime. Wow. You see, this is a trick within a trick. The thumb tip I used was not needed at all. Here's where the magnet was hidden, invisible and out of sight, merely taped to the heel of my hand. Now, I used transparent tape here, but I could have used opaque tape, flesh-colored, so you wouldn't see it at all.
But I guess you didn't have a magnet on your finger. You had it in your bra. That's why you're in such an unnatural position, hovering over the table during the experiments. Besides, I have quite robust evidence from notorious haters of your genius from Mendeleev's Institute for Metrology. Here is what they found out when they visited you at your place, after you had rejected to go to their lab again. Before the experiment, we examined the state of the magnetic field in the room. We placed the probe on the edge of the kitchen table and the switch out of Kulagina's sight. We asked Kulagina to stand up and turn around her axis. According to the results of the measurements, a pronounced dipole, either a piece of magnet or an inductance coil with a current, was found hidden under Kulagina's clothing. By moving the probe along Kulagina's body, we established that there is a permanent magnetic dipole above her waist, the magnetic moment of which is completely independent of the subject's mental state. The action of this dipole explains the rotation of the compass needle.
I just thought that maybe at my place I would have been able to persuade them. But they were so stubborn. These metrologists were so stubborn.
I want you to face reality, Tavarish Kulagina. I'm not trying to debunk you. There is nothing to debunk in your regard. You are a con artist. I want to know why. And the only way for you to escape this purgatory is to start speaking. It's not as hard as you might think. Just start with something simple. This Japanese journalist. What actually happened to him?
この辺です。熱くなる予定です。熱いです。熱いです。かなり熱いです。
Waxed hand, some alkaline powder, sweaty neck. I touched him lightly, no one even noticed, and then I made it look like I was burning him from a distance. I had already done it before, with the famous Soviet movie actor Innokenty Smoktanovsky.
You see, we're moving in the right direction. So what made you create this hoax in the first place? Make it make sense.
Back in 1961, I had no job and we were quite strapped for money. I spread a rumor in my neighborhood that since I'm a war veteran, honored with the Order of the Patriotic War, I could help get some deficit stuff like furniture, refrigerators, TVs. I gathered several thousand rubles, 5 or 7. I can't remember for sure. Well, actually, I couldn't get any of this. After a while, people reported me, and I just had to avoid the trial. I pretended to be sick and got myself into a psychiatry clinic in Leningrad. I had to make it up as if I were insane. A couple of months earlier, I had heard of Rosa Kuleshova. She claimed that she could read newspapers with her palms, feet, and buttocks. I just thought I could simulate something similar. I thought they would deem me insane and not eligible for the trial, but strangely they actually believed me. They decided to investigate me. They brought a consilium, camera people, they started filming me. I just did what I deemed right, so I pretended to concentrate, as if searching for signs within myself, while secretly watching their reflection in a piece of mirror wedged between my fingers.
The psychic power Kulagina possessed. Of her many demonstrations, this is the only film record.
Star.
Это первый.
The first one.
Что же такое?
No, what else?
Сейчас, минутку.
Okay, just a minute.
Треугольник.
Triangle
И 2.
and 2.
25
25
и 88.
and 88.
Ой, 52
No,
и
52 and 88.
69
69,
пусто
empty,
и 6.
and 6.
You might have noticed that I made a strange mistake saying 52 instead of 25. That's because I was seeing it reflected, but for them it was rather proof of something paranormal, as if I was actually seeing it but in just some sort of nebulous, twisted way. They interpreted everything in my favor. So what could I do? And when Professor Kabzarev, a huge scientist, very well respected not only in the USSR but around the globe, appeared on my side, it was kind of sealed for me. He was around, so caring. When I simulated headaches and nausea immediately after an experiment to quickly get rid of all those needles, magnets, and threads, he was acting as if it was all true. As if I was really exhausted from doing miracles.
Tell us more about this professor. He was sticking around throughout your entire career as a simp. What could have made a man of science say things like this? When my assistants claimed that they saw a thread or a magnet, for me it's a compelling case of autosuggestion. They convinced themselves that Kulagina has no paranormal abilities. They expected and they desired to see a thread, a magnet, or other manipulations from her side. And they actually made themselves see it. I attended dozens of Ninel Kulagina's examinations, and I have never seen her using requisite. Her abilities are pure and genuine. This is an unbelievable degree of delusion from a member of the Academy of Science.
You know, when we saw each other for the first time, I realized it immediately. He just saw something in me. He hit on me. I had a husband, he had a wife, but everything was quite obvious. It was such an opportunity, I just couldn't miss it. With him on my side, I was invincible.
Jesus Christ.
When he made up this frog's heart story, accompanied with an absolutely unrelated photo of mine with a levitating egg, people began discussing it as real news. His words meant everything. And for me, it was an opportunity not to waste my life as a housewife and occasional small-time fraud.
How could you not understand when hundreds of eyes are looking at you, when cameras are filming you, when entire academic departments investigate your abilities and actually find physical explanations for it, when the West is discussing you? You feel like a goddess. You feel your life eventually has meaning, a purpose. I guess I just believed it at some point too.
And yet you were bold enough to sue the Journal, a man at the law of the Soviet Minister of Justice, for calling you a serial con artist in 1988.
And I actually won the case. The court decided that the Journal slandered me. You know, in the end, maybe I wasn't the right the entire time. Maybe I had abilities. Maybe I was gifted. If the court decided in my favor, then I didn't defraud anyone.
Oh, Tavarish Kulagina is back. Let me remind you about this court. Your accusations against the journal were built on one single word: serial. They called you a serial fraudster, while you were convicted only once in 1966, after you failed with your tricks in the Serbsky Institute for Psychiatry and were pronounced sane. That court sentenced you to 2 years in prison back then, but since it was your only conviction, legally you were not a serial con artist, just a con artist. However, the trial against the journal revealed something else. Back then you were sentenced for fraud to only 2 years because you were a war hero, a chevalier of the Order of the Patriotic War. But during the 1988 trial, an attorney of a man of the law raised a particularly interesting question. Did Ninel Kulagina steal the Order of the Patriotic War from an actual veteran? And your lawyer had to say this: the Order of the Patriotic War was lost in her apartment during a drunken feast. Ninel Kulagina just took a few photos with this order. She never pretended to have one or used it for her personal gain. The order was then returned to its owner.
That's a lie. I had it. I was honored. There is a photo of mine. I showed it to the journalists. Have a look. I'm wearing it on my uniform.
Come on. You were demonstrating a photo with a levitating egg. Should we believe a photo with your medals?
You can't do this. You can't take it from me. There is an awarding list of the 49th Army, number 31, issued on April 11, 1943.
Oh my God. What a coincidence. Because I have an archived copy of this exact list in my hands. Let's have a look. Bagrov, Homenko, Vlasov, Nasonov, Oleynikov, Farafonov, Chirkin, Efroimson, Sirotkin, Barinov. Your maiden name is Mikhailova, and I can see anyone with this name here. Furthermore, any source regarding your other medals lead to one particular interview made by someone named Perevoschikov. Would you guess who he was interviewing?
Professor Kapsarov.
Bingo. You went so far, you had hidden your own name. Nina, or Ninel. Ninel is Lenin in reverse. That's obviously an alias. Your real name is Nella, or Nelly. So, Nelly, have you actually been to war? You think that's funny? I hope you and your hyenas audience had a nice laugh. I hope it made them subscribe and hit the like button and leave a praising comment. It's easy to make fun of a female who volunteered to the front line at the age of 15, but you have no idea what it is to be trapped in the narrative. What it is to have your entire life dependent on one powerful man following your steps. What it is to have your husband saying that it's difficult to live with you on national television. What it is to be an expendable scarecrow for your own country. Yes, KGB allowed me to stay in the public eye with these tricks, for I could distract at least some resources of Western secret services. You have no idea what it is when you cannot step back because you are sealed in the spider web of your own illusions, hoaxes, and lies. You have no idea what it is when your fame turns against you, smashing and showering debris upon you. I was their toy, their fun, their laboratory mouse till the last day. Am I the one you really want to make fun of?
Ее без конца обследовали, проводили с ней эксперименты, и так как ничего не могли объяснить, обвиняли в шарлатанстве. А она по-прежнему являла чудеса.
И вот в результате ее вот этой дистанционной лучевой деструкции, в месте, где был сосредоточен пучок ее облучения, Произошел разрыв нити в конечном итоге. По уровню, по силе вот этого эффекта, эффект Кулагиной, я бы поставил рядом с эффектом Ури Геллера.
Less than a week after this footage was made, Ninel Kulagina died of a heart attack at the age of 63. Her cringy companion, Yuri Kobzarov, one of the founders of Soviet radiolocation science, a member of the Academy of Science and a hero of socialist labor, equivalent for the hero of the Soviet Union, failed to bear the loss and passed away shortly after. In his relationships with Kulagina, there is no enigma for me. Not anymore. I used to think of our parents' and grandparents' relationships as something pure and virtuous, but the older I get, the more I realize that they were barely different from those observed among residents of a TikTok house. The fact that Kulagina was debunked many times on various occasions by her contemporaries is not as widely discussed as her alleged miracles. Decades have passed, and now there are many people who are defending Kulagina, saying that she was a true psychic and a phenomenon humanity must be proud of, while mocking any attempt to critically revise her legacy. Apparently, in our increasingly more hostile and uncompromising times, people have a lust for miracles. They want to believe that there is something else, some unexplained forces, something above us, promising hope for redemption. In the end of Andrei Tarkovsky's film Stalker, if you haven't seen it, I strongly suggest you do. It's a great sleeping pill. There is a scene where Stalker's handicapped daughter suddenly reveals herself as a paranormal superhuman, a telekinetic, a scene that was allegedly inspired by Ninel Kulagina. A scene demonstrating that even amidst the ubiquitous social, technological, ecological decline, there is still a light of hope, there is room for a miracle. But Kulagina was always lacking what this scene has. You see, the girl moves objects outwards. Kulagina could never do this, because when you move things using a thin thread, you can only pull them toward you, not push them away. No matter how hard you want to believe, and I truly want to believe, Kulagina was not a light of hope. She was a scam artist. Subscribe to the channel. Share this video on your Discord server, Facebook, or Reddit. Leave a comment. Check out my other videos.